Thank you all for joining us today. We're here to talk about a really exciting development. So, NYSERDA had the Clean Energy Communities Program, of which many municipalities participated in the first round, which we'll talk about a little bit more in the future here. But today we're going to be presenting the second iteration of that program, the leadership round, and specifically here in the Southern Tier. And we're presenting this because we're a cooperative extension and we administer this program here in the Southern Tier. So some quick Zoom housekeeping. We're recording this webinar. It's going to be available afterwards on our website at southerntiercec.org. In terms of the webinar itself, we're obviously using the Zoom platform. So what we're hoping to do today is to use the Q&A feature to basically, if you have any questions that are about the program itself, or if you're seeking clarifications about any specific points, put those into the Q&A. Todd and I will try and monitor it for the most part and answer questions, but we'll be covering all of them at the very end. The chat itself should be used for anything that's logistical or any other communications. So if for some reason you can't hear me, there's some stuttering going on because of internet connections, throw that into the chat, and our other colleague Theodora is going to be monitoring that, and we'll flag anything important for us. So with that, we'll get started. So I mentioned a couple members of our team. We have 3 of us on the screen that are going to be joining you today. We have myself. I'm Terry Carroll. I manage the program and I cover Broome, Shenango, Delaware, and Tompkins County. We're joined today also by Todd Nobby. He's the coordinator for Chemung, Schuyler, Steuben, and Tioga counties. We have Theodora Weatherby, who's our outreach and website coordinator. So you might have been getting emails from her, e-blasts from her. And then we have a 4th member who's not on the webinar today. Her name is Christina Zill. She's with us in Delaware County and working specifically with a bunch of communities over there. So, welcome everyone, and hopefully you recognize some of our faces, if not our email addresses. So we wanted to talk a little bit about what we do as coordinators. And really our main objective is to help your municipality become a clean energy community. And namely, we do that by first educating about the Clean Energy Communities Program. We do that through our website, through webinars like this, the e-blast that we send out. But we're also here to help your community identify, implement, and achieve clean energy actions. Really trying to line up what's in the program with what the objectives for your community are. We assist your community with completing some of these clean energy actions. So whether it's talking about, the cost benefit of the lighting upgrade, or explaining to you how a certain incentive program works, we're here to help you, assist in completing the actions themselves. And once they're completed, to help guide you on how you're going to submit that and get credit from it through the NYSERDA program, which isn't always the easiest, unfortunately. Finally, we're also here to provide you with tools and analysis. Looking at, what is this clean energy going to do for your community? What is it going to change in terms of your bills, in terms of, how much you're paying per year? And really, let's create some resources. Let's look at what is going to be a plan for your community moving forward. What are the natural resources you have? How much greenhouse gas emissions are you emitting? What is each action going to do? And all of this is done through this, program, the Clean Energy Communities Program. And that program is here for counties, cities, towns, and villages. So we're working with municipalities like yours. And what we're doing is we're encouraging those communities to implement clean energy actions that are hopefully going to save the municipality's energy costs, create some jobs, and ultimately improve the environment. And so, as I mentioned, we're here to provide those tools, resources, and technical assistance. And by doing that, the program is going to recognize the leadership and completion of clean energy projects that all of the municipalities are taking. So why engage in this program? Well, the number one reason that we hear from municipalities is because of the funding opportunity. So the program itself has a whole bunch of funding attached to it, and we'll cover that in just a moment. But that's, obviously a big reason for communities, but it's not the only reason. So as we go through different actions and municipalities complete those actions, there's going to be an opportunity to save money by accomplishing those. And so if you're switching out your streetlights to LEDs, there's a savings attached to it. If you're switching to a more efficient heating system, or if you're insulating your buildings, there's going to be savings from that. And we can help you identify exactly what those savings are and whether it's going to be a good idea or not. And that's the technical assistance that we're here to provide, to try and figure out how do you do something specifically, or what is going to be the benefit. And so engaging in this program, lets you tap into the resources that, Todd, myself, Christina, and Theodora have, but also to a broader network across the state of coordinators that are all working together on this program. And finally, the last reason to do it is to be recognized as a leader when it comes to clean energy. And that's something that's increasingly important, we're finding, to a lot of communities. So the first round of the program started back in 2016 and ran through 2020. And in that first round, we did a bunch of good work. We worked with over 80 communities across the southern tier. We helped 37 of them become what are called designated communities. So they went above and beyond in the program. And those communities were awarded over $1.7 million in grant funds. And that funding went to things like charging stations, electric vehicles, LED streetlights, and a whole bunch of other things. Over 220 actions were completed in the first round of the program, and we're hoping to do the same in this next round. And so that next round was just released a few weeks ago. I think many of you got emails from us in regards to it. And basically what this new round is, it's called the leadership round, and it has new actions, new ways for communities to be recognized as leaders, over $800,000 earmarked specifically for the southern tier, and then additional funding for communities that's statewide. So the possibility is going to be there to, once again, get over $1 million for the region if, communities start to put those actions together. And finally, there's going to be some additional funding for New York State disadvantaged communities. So I'm going to turn it over now to Todd, who's going to talk a little bit about what that funding looks like.
Yeah, so let's take a look at this funding. So in the leadership round, there are a few different avenues that we can take to receive some grant funding. So there are three primary ways, and these are through designation grants, point-based grants, and action grants. So the designation grants are similar to how you would receive funding in the previous iteration of the Clean Energy Communities Program. It's primarily for newly participating communities and communities that have been participating in the previous round, but did not complete 4 high impact actions. So the designation grant, all you have to do is complete 4 high impact actions and become a designated clean energy community, and you'll receive a $5,000 grant award. The next way to receive grant funding, and you do not need to be a designated clean energy community to do so, is through the point-based grants. So each high impact action that you complete has an allotted number of points attached to it. So as you complete more high impact actions, you'll collect more points. And when you get to certain point tiers, which we'll go over in a second, you'll become eligible for grant money. And then the third way that you're going to be able to receive grant money in our program is through action grants. So we now have certain actions that, when successfully completed, will award you with additional funding when you complete them. Next. So let's take a look at these point-based grants. So point-based grants are broken down based on your municipality size. All these grants are on a first come, first served basis. So once they're gone, they're gone. Our municipality sizes are broken up into large municipalities. So municipalities that have a population of greater 40,000 residents or more. And these large municipalities will be competing for statewide grants. So grants across the whole state of New York. Small and medium municipalities are municipalities that are 40,000 or less than 40,000 people, and they'll be competing for regional grants. And these regional grants, and with respect to us, are just for the southern tier. So there's a specific amount of grants allocated for the southern tier that small and medium municipalities will be competing for. Next. So let's take a look at the point-based grant breakdown for the large communities. So as I mentioned earlier, you'll complete high impact actions and you'll start accumulating points. So there are 3 point tiers that we will work towards. There are 3,000 points, 4,000 points, and 5,000 points. So when you complete enough actions to get to the 3,000 point tier, you'll become eligible for a $30,000 grant. And there are 50 of these grants across the whole state. As we continue to accumulate more points and complete more actions, and we get to that 4,000 point tier, you can become eligible for a $70,000 grant award. And there are 20 of these across the state. And for the municipalities that will be able to complete enough actions to receive 5,000 points, they'll have the potential to receive $150,000 in grant money. And there are 10 of these grants statewide. So if you're able to reach the 3,000, 4,000, and 5,000 point tiers, you could potentially bring in $250,000 in grant money to your community. And this is for the large communities. Next. So for our small and medium communities, the setup is still the same. We're going to work towards those 3,000, 4,000, and 5,000 point tiers, but our grant amounts are going to be slightly different, and we're going to be competing solely for regional grants. So when you get to that 3,000 point tier, you could become eligible for a $10,000 grant award, and there are 40 of these earmarked for the southern tier. As we complete more actions and we get to that 4,000 level point, that 4,000 point tier, you can become eligible for a $20,000 grant, and there are 10 of these for the southern tier. And when you complete enough actions to get to the 5,000 points, you can be eligible for a $70,000 grant award, and there are 4 of these for the southern tier. So if you move through 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 points, and you hit each point tier, you could bring in $100,000 in grant money to your community. Next. So another way you can bring in money is through as we mentioned, is through our action grants. So these are awarded for the completion of specific high impact actions, and they are also on a first come, first served basis. All these action grants are statewide, so they're not broken down per region. They're all statewide. And the two actions that bring forth grant money are adopting the New York Stretch Energy Code. So if you're a large community, you have the potential, if you adopt this code early on, to bring in $50,000. If you're a small and medium community and you adopt this code early on, you can bring in $5,000 in grant money. And then our community campaigns is another action that has money that awards grant money for the successful completion of the actions. If you're a large community, you can bring in $15,000 per campaign that you complete in this action. And if you're a small and medium-sized community, you can bring in $5,000 per campaign that you for successful completion of this action. And we'll get into these actions a little bit in more detail later on. Next. So we've been moving through this process. We've been participating. We've been awarded some grant money now. So what are our next steps? Well, so when you are awarded grant money in our program, these grants will have no required cost share. If you receive a grant that is $5,000 or less, you'll have to fill out a grant application form, but you will not be required to enter into a project contract or a contract with NYSERDA. You'll receive essentially a check in the mail. If your grant that you receive is greater than $5,000, you will be required to enter into a contract and for these larger grants. These larger grants will also, for projects for these larger grants, you can choose from pre-approved project types, or you can apply for a custom project. Some examples of these pre-approved projects are converting your streetlights to LEDs, purchasing electric vehicles, doing energy efficiency upgrades to your municipal buildings. Custom projects take a little bit longer to complete. They need to meet certain metrics in order to be approved by NYSERDA. So that feel free to propose one. The time behind approval will be a little bit longer than taking a pre-approved project route. Next.
Yeah, so I'm going to go over some examples of some of the grant projects and hopefully motivate and interest some of you to get involved by seeing what some of our communities in the first round accomplished. So, on this page on the left, we have the town of Hamden in Delaware County. They got a $50,000 grant and used that funding to not only put solar on their town hall, which you can see a nice picture of there, but they also upgraded their heating system in that town hall as well. So they're feeling the benefits of that for this winter for sure. On the right, you have the town of Ulysses in Tompkins County. They installed heat pumps in their town hall, so they've completely renovated that heating system, and I'm sure they're pretty excited to see how that's doing this summer and winter when they're going to have great air conditioning as well as the heating this winter. Some more projects. The village of Montour Falls installed an electric vehicle charging station, and that's pictured right there with an actual electric vehicle plugged in. So that was fantastic to see. We saw a bunch of other communities either use CEC fundings for that or tap into some other sources of funding, either through the DEC's ZEV rebate program or EV infrastructure program, or through, the new NYSERDA Charge Ready New York program, both of which are examples that we as coordinators can help you navigate and tap into. On the other side, Tompkins County also did an EV project. So they installed a bunch of electric vehicle charging stations and also used some funds to buy electric vehicles themselves, which was a pretty exciting thing to see. And then, we also had some projects that were focused more on the community itself. So Tompkins County, in addition to that EV project, also used some funds to basically put towards a program called the Business Energy Advisor. And that was a planner that was helping commercial businesses with their energy retrofits. The town of Caroline in Tompkins County started an LED light bulb giveaway where they were giving their residents LED light bulbs. And that's actually a project that the town of Dickinson in Broome County is going to be doing as well. So we were excited to see those projects that were focused on the community. A really innovative one was the Clean Energy Matching Fund. So the city of Binghamton started providing matching funds for clean energy projects for both residents and businesses who were deciding to, further insulate their homes or put in solar, or put in an electric vehicle charging station. So that was an innovative project, not just for the Southern Tier, but statewide, and something we like to encourage and see those innovative projects come out of our region. On the other side, wastewater treatment, maybe not as innovative, but something that's going to see dramatic savings for the town of Windsor once those improvements are fully made. And finally, another one that's not super innovative, but a lot of our communities use the funding that they got through the first round of the program to pay for the conversion of their streetlights to LEDs. And this is one of those cost benefits that we've seen, just be huge for communities that are switching over, able to save thousands of dollars every year. So, if you haven't done that yet, that's definitely something to look into and something we'd be happy to help out with. So in addition to all the funds that Todd talked about before and these examples that we gave you, one new aspect of the leadership round is going to be this disadvantaged community bonus. And so any points-based or action grant that's awarded in the amount of $20,000 or more could be eligible for up to $10,000 more in bonus funding. And so grant projects are going to have to be in these New York State disadvantaged communities in the applying jurisdiction. There's a map that's accessible on the NYSERDA website. We've included a little screenshot here for you of not the whole Southern Tier, but a pretty big elongation of it. And you can see those areas highlighted in blue are noted disadvantaged communities. So if you're one of those communities that you see there, if you get one of these grants that are $20,000 or more and you do a project in these areas, say installing an electric vehicle charging station, doing upgrades to a building that's in these areas, doing a residential project that's, focused on the community, there is going to be the possibility to get $10,000 in bonus funding. 90 of them are available statewide, and once again, first come, first serve. So, definitely something that if you're thinking about tapping into, you're going to want to go sooner rather than later. So we've now talked about the grants. Hopefully you're interested, you're inspired by what you've seen other communities do. And so now we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how exactly do you do these actions in order to get to the funding. So I'll turn it back over to Todd, who's going to run you through the different high impact action items.
Yeah. So in the leadership round, we have retained all the original high impact actions, and we've also included some new ones. And we've made some updates to some of these original high impact actions also. So we're going to run through each one of these high impact actions, what the action is, how many points are allotted for that action, and the steps, briefly the steps that you would have to take in order to successfully complete these actions. Next. So the first action we're going to start off with is a unified solar permit. So this action is worth 200 points. This is adopting the New York State Unified Solar Permit to help streamline approval processes for small scale solar. So this is primarily for residential and small business solar installations. It's applicable to any municipality that enforces the uniform code for private buildings. And it's a pretty simple one to complete. All your municipality has to do is pass a local law or ordinance that adopts the New York State Unified Solar Permit. And then you just need to format the Unified Solar Permit application to be specific to your community. And that's something that we can help you do. Next. So we also have our energy code enforcement training. This was a very popular one in the first round of the Clean Energy Communities program. This is also worth 200 points. And it's just training your code compliance officers in the best practices in energy code enforcement. It's also, it's applicable to any municipality. This action is applicable to any municipality that enforces the uniform code for private buildings. Our NYSERDA Clean Energy Communities program will host energy code enforcement trainings, specific trainings throughout the year that cover both residential and commercial workshops. You just need one code enforcement officer or enforcement official to attend this training to receive credit for this action. Next. Our program has retained our PACE financing or property assessed clean energy financing. Through completing this action, you can be awarded up to 500 points. This is just authorizing a financing program for clean energy upgrades to commercial or nonprofit properties. And it's applicable to counties and cities only. This action is broken into two sub-actions. Open CPACE authorization. This is worth 200 points. And it's just passing a local law that establishes an open CPACE program in your municipality. And your local government will go into an agreement with the Energy Improvement Corporation, or EIC. If this is an action that you are interested in, please contact me and Terry, and we will put you in contact with the Energy Improvement Corporation to take the next steps in completing this action. So once you've passed Open CPACE and you've received credit for it, you can complete the next sub-action to achieve another 300 points, and that's implementing projects. And all you have to do is submit documentation that demonstrates you have an Open CPACE project located in your jurisdiction. Next. Another action is the clean energy upgrades. This action is worth 500 points. This action is achieving a 10% reduction in your municipal buildings' greenhouse gas emissions, and is applicable to all communities. The basic steps that you have to take in this are cataloging at least 12 months of energy use data for a specific property, for your properties, your municipal buildings, using a software called Energy Star Portfolio Manager. And then we'll share this 12 months of energy use data with NYSERDA through the Energy Star Portfolio Manager website. And then we just need to compile documentation that demonstrates that we've achieved a minimum of 10% greenhouse gas reduction coming from our municipal buildings as a result of building upgrades. So such as installing LED lights in your village hall, for example. And the majority of these upgrades have to be done after January 1st, 2020. And to go along with this action, we need to submit a clean energy upgrades calculator. This calculator just catalogs energy use, the estimated savings or the savings that we are seeing through the clean energy upgrades, and will show helps show the 10% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Next. We have our LED streetlights next. Through completion of this action, you can be awarded up to 900 points. This action, all you have to do is convert at least half of your municipal Copperhead or decorative style streetlights to LEDs. It's applicable to communities that pay for electricity of most of their streetlights within their jurisdiction. And there's two ways you can receive credit for this action. It's by converting your Copperhead style streetlights over to LEDs. If you do this, you would be awarded 700 points in our program. All you have to do is convert a minimum of 50% of your streetlights. If you have 20 streetlights or less, then you just need to convert a minimum of 10 fixtures to qualify. This has also been opened up to converting decorative style streetlights to LEDs. If you do this, you can be awarded 200 points. And it's the same criteria as above. You just need to convert a minimum of 50% of your streetlights to LEDs. And if you have 20 streetlights or less, then you just need to convert a minimum of 10 fixtures. Next. So we have our benchmarking high impact action. If you walk through this action and all its sub-actions, you can be awarded up to 1,100 points. This is just adopting a policy that says you're going to track and report the energy use of your municipal buildings or large private buildings. and it's applicable to all communities. So the first step in this is completing the municipal benchmarking action. This is worth 100 points. And all you have to do is submit a certified copy of a local law resolution that says that your municipality is going to benchmark or track and record their building's energy use. And it's only applicable for buildings that are greater than 1,000 square feet or greater. We have another sub-action. It's an advanced reporting action, and this is worth 200 points. Here, you just need to display a benchmarking report that we can generate using the EPA, the Energy Star Portfolio Manager that shows 24 months of energy use data and its related greenhouse gas emissions. And then we just have to share our community's portfolio manager account with NYSERDA. And then we have the third benchmarking sub-action, the large private buildings, and this is worth 800 points. Now, this is only applicable to cities, towns, and villages with a population of 40,000 people or greater. And this just is, to get credit for this sub-action, you just need to pass a local law or ordinance that requires commercial and multifamily buildings that are 25,000 square feet or larger to benchmark or to track and report their energy use. Next. We have our Clean Fleets action. If you walk through all the sub-actions associated with Clean Fleets, you can receive up to 1,000 points. This is really deploying light to heavy duty electric vehicles or installing electric vehicle charging stations, and it's applicable to all communities. If you've installed charging stations and received action credit for it in the first iteration of the Clean Energy Communities program, you'll be retroactively awarded 100 points. Charging stations that were installed after January 26, 2021 will be eligible to receive 200 points, and it'd be counted as another action in our program. If your municipality decides to purchase a light or medium duty electric vehicle, you can receive 300 points. These electric vehicles can be plug-in hybrids or full battery electric vehicles. You can also choose to purchase a heavy duty electric vehicle, and this will by doing this, you would receive 400 points. And this vehicle has to be a Class 7 or a Class 8 plug-in hybrid or battery electric vehicle. Next. Another way you can receive some points is by participating in the receiving Climate Smart Community certification. Through this, you can receive up to 800 points. So the Climate Smart Community certification, Climate Smart Communities is a program through the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to help reduce carbon emissions and build municipalities' resilience against climate change. All communities can participate in this program. And as you move through this program that's associated with the DEC, you can reach these different certification levels, so bronze certification and silver certification. If you get to silver certification or bronze certification, excuse me, in the Climate Smart Communities program, you will be awarded 600 points in the Clean Energy Communities program. And if you become silver certified in Climate Smart Communities, you will receive 200 points in the Clean Energy Communities program. And this is something that Terry and I would be happy to dive in deeper with you in some one-on-ones later on. Next. So now we have our final action. This is community choice aggregation. By completing this action, you can receive up to 2,000 points. This is applicable to cities, towns, and villages. You have two sub-actions that you can complete here. It's by enrolling into a community choice aggregation or entering into a contract with an energy services company to participate in to have them supply electricity to your CCA customers, and choosing 100% renewable clean energy product mix. And that's the key thing. It has to be 100% renewable default supply mix to receive credit in our program. Another way you can receive points in our program is by choosing to do an opt-out community distributed generation. And to do this, to earn points for this, you just need to have no less than 600 accounts or 50%, whichever is greater, of your residential or small commercial electricity accounts enrolled into an active community distributed generation project. And now I'm going to turn it over to Terry to talk about some of the new actions that are brought forward in the leadership rounds.
Fantastic. Thanks, Todd. So as Todd mentioned, we have some new actions, the clean heating and cooling demo, 100% renewable electricity, as well as a couple of actions that are associated with those grants that Todd were talking about earlier. So the first action we're going to cover is the clean heating and cooling demo. And demo in this case is standing for demonstration. So this is an action that's worth up to 500 points. And what it's about is converting a municipal facility to be all electric with either ground or air source heat pumps. It's applicable to all communities. And what it means is that you're submitting a certification form that can confirm that at least one municipal building has been converted to use air or ground source heat pump systems. Now, something important to note is that these systems have to have been installed after January 1st, 2020. So unfortunately, any of you that have had a building in place that are using these systems from before that time, that's not going to count. But anyone that's installed a system since January 1st, 2020 will definitely already qualify for this action. And we're already seeing communities start to do this even without it having been in action. So we're excited to see a few more people jump in and try and get some points for this action. In addition to putting in a brand new heat pump system, you're also going to need to submit photographic evidence of an education kiosk, a display, some sort of materials used to educate municipal staff and the public on the benefits of electrification. So it's not the easiest action in the world, but it's one that's going to reward a good amount of points and something that I think we'll start to see more and more municipalities do, especially as we see increased incentives for heat pumps. The next action is called 100% renewable electricity. And this is worth 500 points. And simply put, it's using renewable electricity to resources for all of the electricity supply needs of the municipal government. So once again, applicable to any community in our area, and it has to be done in basically two different ways. You can either purchase what are called renewable energy certificates, or you can buy clean power through an energy service company or ESCO. Once you do either one of those, we'll help you complete a 100% renewable electricity certification form that indicates which option you took and that it's covering 100% of the municipal government's electrical supply needs. So, step one in this might be finding out exactly how much electricity your municipality uses on a yearly basis. And then we can try and figure out whether it's going to make sense for you to buy renewable energy certificates or try and find an ESCO that can provide renewable electricity for you directly. So that's one that we're excited to start doing with communities and hopeful of seeing someone be an early taker on this. Now we're going to jump over to the action grants. So as a quick reminder, these are the grants, or these are the actions that not only are associated with points towards the point-based grants, but as you do them, you're also going to get funding. So with the New York Stretch Energy Code, that is going to be worth 1,200 points. So that's one of the highest point totals available for any single action. And what it is adopting the energy code that is more stringent than the base energy code. It's about 10% more stringent than the current energy code. And again, action grant eligible, and that funding chart below shows you how much it's worth based on your municipality size. It's applicable if you enforce the uniform code for private buildings. So generally, this is going to be your towns, villages, and cities. And in the case of Shenango County, the county, basically all you're going to have to do is to pass a local law or ordinance adopting the New York Stretch Energy Code. And anyone that does this is going to be eligible for grant funding as long as they do so before December 31st of this year, 2021. So there's 40 grants for large communities statewide, and the amount is $50,000 for those awards. And then for small and medium communities, the grant amount is $5,000, and there's going to be 100 of those statewide. So we expect this to be fairly competitive. If you're interested in finding out more about the New York Stretch Energy Code, we are partnering with an engineering firm, Tatum Engineering, here in the Southern Tier, to help educate municipalities on exactly what this is going to entail. So if you want to find out more, or if your code enforcement officer wants to find out more about exactly what the New York Stretch Code is going to mean, please let us know and we'll set up a meeting with you, Tatum Engineering, and ourselves to talk about if it's going to make sense for your community and really what are the first steps to take. The last action that we're going to talk about today is the community campaigns action. Once again, this is going to be one of those actions that as you do it, you can get points and you can get funding. And what it entails is undertaking one or more campaigns to promote clean energy in your community. And so you're going to be, as a municipality, actively engaging in activities that are going to promote residential participation in community campaigns. Applicable to anyone, counties, cities, villages, towns, doesn't matter. And there's 4 different campaign types. And each campaign is worth 200 points. And so the 4 campaign types are community solar, electric vehicles, clean heating and cooling / energy efficiency, and demand response. And large communities that are engaging in this, the first 40 communities that complete a community community campaign are going to be awarded $15,000. And what we mean by participating is they're going to engage in activities that are going to get 25 residents to sign up. So that might be signing up for community solar, purchasing an electric vehicle, installing an electric heat pump, or doing some energy efficiency work, or joining a utility demand response program. Same thing for small and medium communities, except rather than trying to get 25 participants, you're only going to need 10 participants. So that's 10 folks signing up for community solar, or 10 folks doing energy efficiency work. And the first 100 communities statewide to do this are going to receive $5,000 per campaign. So that means if your community engages in a community solar campaign and completes that campaign, you could get either $15,000 as a large community or $5,000 as a small and medium community. And then if you did another campaign, you could get another $15,000 or another $5,000 on top of that. Similarly with the points, if you do a community solar campaign, you could get 200 points. If you then follow that up with an electric vehicle campaign, you could get another 200 points for a total of 400 points. So this is one of those actions that has the possibility to slowly add up, both in terms of points and in terms of funding. And we have a lot of fantastic partners across the Southern Tier that are either engaged in clean heating and cooling campaigns already, or are interested in participating in community solar campaigns. So if this is something that interests your community, certainly let us know and we'll connect you with some of those partners so you can start engaging in activities that are going to promote residential participation. So that's a general overview of all the actions. And it can seem pretty daunting, pretty overwhelming. There's a lot of actions, especially compared to the previous program where you're only completing 4 actions and then getting funding. Luckily, we have a tool in place to help us work with communities to figure not only how many points they currently have, but also to try and look at actions and say, okay, what are going to be the short-term actions we want to take on? Or maybe what are some of our long-term goals? And we'll go through this calculator with you and we'll know all the ones that you might have already accomplished, and then slowly go through and say, okay, do you want to do this one? Does it make sense for your community? And we'll chart out a path to try and hit those point thresholds. So remember, those point thresholds are 3,000 points, 4,000 points, and 5,000 points. And so we're going to be working with you to try and figure out how are we going to get to each of these different stages, and what do you want to start working on first? And so we thought we'd give some of our suggestions for some early actions that communities might want to take on. And the first one that we'll mention is benchmarking. So Todd covered this a little bit, but we thought we'd reiterate that benchmarking is simply passing a resolution to begin benchmarking municipal buildings. And we have benchmarking resolution templates that we'd be happy to share with you that you can take a look at. Once you do that, you can then start to benchmark the buildings themselves. So our website, southerntiercec.org, has some fantastic videos that Todd and Theodora put together that show you exactly how to do the benchmarking, from creating an account in the Energy Star Portfolio Manager program, or to creating a building profile and submitting data and running reports. That's all on our website, so it should make it pretty easy. And you're not going to have to sit through a half-hour video. They're all in 5-minute snippets. So if you have done it before and you just need a quick refresher, go on our website and take a look at those videos. Once you've benchmarked, once you've put in that energy use data into the Portfolio Manager software, we're going to share that municipal profile view with NYSERDA so that they can make sure that you are actually doing the work, and then we'll help you submit that action for approval. This is one of those actions that's low cost, no cost, and it's not actually that much effort. Most municipalities that are benchmarking say that this takes them about 5 to 10 minutes a month. So not too bad to complete a whole action in this program. The next early action that we're going to highlight is the community campaigns. And we're highlighting this not only because it comes with funding and because, there's the potential to stack up points, but also because we have some really fantastic organizations across the Southern Tier that are already doing this great work and would love to see municipal support on their programs. And so over in Steuben and Schuyler County, we have Finger Lakes Heat Smart. In Tompkins and Chemung, we have Heat Smart Tompkins. And then over east, we have Tioga, Broome, Shenango, and Delaware counties. That's the Heat Smart Southern Tier program. And all of these partner organizations are already running Heat Smart campaigns. And they'd be happy to work with you to basically fill out a campaign scoping document. That's a necessary component before you get started. And once that scoping document is filled out, you submit that to NYSERDA for approval, engage in the campaign activities that you talked about doing, and then track participant information in terms of who's signing up for community solar and who put in heat pumps. And once you get to those thresholds of 10 participants, 25 participants, depending on your municipality size, you can then submit that action for approval. So when we say campaign activities, you might wonder, well, what does that mean? So it could be as simple as, passing a resolution in support of the campaign, sending out information to your residents, either in the mail or through e-blasts, putting up a page on your website saying, hey, we're in support of this campaign. We want our residents to find out more about, becoming heat smart or about joining a community solar farm or learning more about electric vehicles. So, this is an action that it's going to require a little bit of effort, but we think it's going to really show in terms of the rewards, both in terms of points and in terms of the funding itself. So once you take on those two early actions, then you might start, getting some funding and looking towards doing some of these harder actions, some of the actions that may take a little bit of funding themselves. And one of these is the clean energy upgrades action. And for that action, you're going to track building energy usage for 12 months. So we can look at previous bills to look at what are the 12 months of building energy. And then once we do that, you can look at some building upgrades that are going to lead to greenhouse gas emission savings. A lot of the times, as Todd mentioned, simply changing out the LEDs in your town hall and in your DPW, your public works facility, that might be enough to help you reach that 10% reduction in emissions. But if you're also changing out your heating system, insulating your buildings or air sealing, all of that stuff can add up. And really what we're looking for is just a 10% reduction in emissions. So if we can, look at what you've done or what you're in the process of doing, we can try and gauge whether you hit that 10% mark or not. And if you have, we'll help you fill out that clean energy upgrades calculator. And again, submit that for approval from NYSERDA. Finally, the last action we'll cover is the clean fleets action. This is another one that takes a little bit of funding in some cases, but thankfully there's some really fantastic incentives available right now from both the state through NYSERDA's Charge Ready New York program and now the utility. And so in our region, NYSEG has what's called the Make Ready program, which is going to help cover the installation costs and the site preparation costs, which is pretty fantastic. So the Clean Fleets program can be completed either by installing an electric vehicle charging station or by purchasing a light, medium, or heavy duty electric vehicle. And they're all worth varying amounts of points, as Todd covered a little bit earlier. If you do any of these three items, there's a really simple calculator where you just put in some basic information about either the charging station you installed or about the EV that you bought, and then you can submit that action for approval. So those are maybe some early actions to consider. And then if you're a little bit more advanced in the program, some later actions that you might want to take on. So the last thing that we'll mention, and then we'll get to questions, is this idea of next steps. So we've covered a lot today. It can seem pretty daunting. So we want to just give you some really basic things that you can do. And so the first one is to think about who in our municipality is going to try and spearhead this. Who can be a direct contact to work with Todd, myself, Christina. And once you appoint someone, have them reach out to us. We'll sit down with you. We'll say, okay, here are the actions that you've already accomplished. Here are the ones that you're interested in accomplishing. And here are the ones that are more long-term goals. And once we know what those ones that you've accomplished are, we can start gathering the documentation for it. So you've converted your streetlights already. All right, let's just fill out this form. Oh, you want to do this action? Okay, here's the 3 things that you need to do to get started on that. And once we do that, we'll start to set up follow-up meetings, either setting up a meeting to, meet with partners to work on a community campaign, or, to bring in Tatum Engineering to talk about the New York stretch code, or any, one of the different actions that you can take. So, the first step though is really to just find out what is interesting to you. And so meet with us, talk with us, and then we'll start, working with you. We'll help you create, finish these actions, complete the actions, submit the documentation. And then hopefully once you start getting that funding, you'll be able to start using that grant funding. And so the last thing that we can do is not only help you with the application or anything like that, but really start to think about what's going to be the best use of funding. What is it going to do for our community to get $5,000 or $10,000, or even some of those larger grant amounts, $150,000, $70,000. So hopefully after hearing all of this, you're not too overwhelmed, and you'll take that first step of finding someone in your community to spearhead this, and then reach out to Todd and myself. And so if you reach out to us, we'll start to connect you with the different folks that you need in order to get started on these different actions. If you want more information, you can visit our website, southerntiercec.org. As we mentioned at the start, a recording of this presentation is going to be put onto this website. So if you feel like we went over something too quickly and you want to see it again, you'll be able to access that recording. But also feel free to reach out to us, and we're going to be happy to answer any questions at that point. So speaking of questions, we thought we would take a few now. So if you want, you can either put some questions into the Q&A. And I see that we have one answer and question there so far. So we'll cover it again in case folks haven't seen that question. And then if you have anything that you want to ask, please, ask it now, and we're happy to answer questions for the next few minutes. So Theodora, why don't we start by you asking the question that's already been put into the Q&A, and then we'll see if any more come in.
Perfect. So the first question that came in the Q&A section is from Irene. She said, if a municipality has previously taken actions and won money, do those previous actions count towards achieving 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 points? Or does the municipality start from zero and accumulate points from new actions?
Yeah, so some of you can see the answer I typed in, but I'll just reiterate. There's going to be certain actions that absolutely, if your community has already done them in the first program, so if you've already passed the Unit Sub 5 solar permit, if you've already passed the resolution to benchmark your buildings, you are already going to get credit for that, especially if you've already submitted it in the program. If you've already been, approved for that action, more than likely you're going to get points for it. There are some specific actions, code enforcement training being one of them, where there's new versions of it. So when we did the first code enforcement training, this was, 3-4 years ago in some cases, and that was a whole different energy code. So in March of this past year, a new energy code came out, and NYSERDA wants, code enforcement officers to get trained on this new energy code. So that action is going to require for municipalities to send their officers, officials to this new training in order to get points for it. But by and large, if you've already been approved for actions, you should be getting the points for them. All right, so why don't we keep going here? So if you want to ask Jerry Wiley's question, Theodora, and then we'll just go from there.
And just to that last question as well, I want to point out that NYSERDA is keeping scorecards on their website. So any municipality can go on there now and check to see what points they have. They may already have points available. I can link that in the chat in just a second. So our next question says, if one or two of the 4 high impact actions are not completed until after the 100% renewable electricity CCA default period ends, does that CCA count?
So Jerry, I think this is in reference to maybe a municipality that already has completed the CCA action. So if they've already completed the CCA action and it's been approved by NYSERDA, that's always going to count as an action completed. If they haven't submitted that action and that default period is over, then they won't get credit for it anymore. So they would have to submit that before that CCA default period ended. So for those of you that are wondering, there are some communities that have engaged in a community choice aggregation that might be on 100% renewable electricity as the default setting for their residents. If for whatever reason they decide to stop offering 100% renewable electricity as the default, that would not qualify for the CCA action. The CCA action is strictly for communities that are using 100% renewable electricity for the default action.
All right, and then for the next one, I'm gonna jump down to another CCA question by Irene. It takes quite a bit of municipal effort to gear up and undertake CCA. Why isn't there an action grant to assist municipalities in doing this?
Yeah, you know, we don't design the program, we just administer it. That's feedback that we can bring back to NYSERDA as a suggestion for a future program. But well, I don't know, I can't answer that, but we'll bring back that feedback.
All right, the next question. Can a municipality who doubles their basic requirement for a community campaign get funding twice for the same campaign?
You want to take this, Todd?
Sure, I can take it. Yeah. So you're just going to receive credit. So there are 4 different campaigns that you can do in the community campaigns. If you participated in, say, community solar, and you do that once and it's successful, and you decide to do it again, you'll only get, I believe you'll only get credit for doing it the first time. And in order to receive more credits for doing a community campaign, you'll have to do a different type of community campaign, such as clean heating and cooling, or community campaign for demand response.
All right, and then our next question is, what constitutes a disadvantaged community?
Yeah, so thanks for that. So NYSERDA has specific requirements under what falls as a disadvantaged community. I think primarily they're looking at income levels for different areas. So that is on their website with the map. I don't know that they specifically lay out exactly what the requirements are, but we can look into that and try and get you an answer. So we'll put a link to that in the chat if you want to see that disadvantage page, and hopefully that'll provide some more information. But I don't know that they've listed specifically what the exact requirements are. And then I see that we have someone that's raised their hand. So Nancy, I don't know if you're wanting to ask the question. Nope. And then Nancy's disappeared. So, you know, I'm happy to answer any more questions if anyone else has any questions. Otherwise, we can, you know, start to end this shortly. You know, I'll just continue to reiterate that Todd, myself, Christina in Delaware County, you know, we're happy to, you know, work with municipalities one-on-one on this program. So if you want us to come and present, you know, kind of what we did today, maybe a little bit more brief and not go into as much detail, you know, we're happy to present to town boards, to, you know, your fellow common council members, town board, village members. So please, you know, reach out to us. We're happy to answer any questions and, you know, help out. So I see we do have another question though.
Perfect. So do school buildings count as municipal buildings?
So that's a tricky one. So if you are a municipality that owns the school building and are paying for the utilities and have operational control over those buildings, you know, an example might be a city school district where the city owns the schools and operates the schools, then yes. For the most part though, if the school district is separate to the municipality, so the school district owns the buildings, they have their own operational financial control, then the answer is no. So that, you know, improvements to that building wouldn't necessarily count, unfortunately.
There were 2 questions that were asked that we did not say out loud, but I answered them. I just want to reiterate them. So one was, does an EV charger have to be located on municipal property? It does not have to be located on municipal property, but it does need to be owned and operated by the municipality. And then there was another question earlier that was about where can we find the Energy Star portfolio manager? And I posted a link to that in the chat, and Theodore just posted on the Q&A.
Fantastic. And to just talk a little bit more about that EV charging station question, if it has to be located on municipal property. Todd's absolutely right, it doesn't have to be. So we have an example of this. The city of Ithaca, has a parking garage that they share with some of the, hotels, and they installed an electric vehicle charging station, in that parking garage. And even though it's kind of shared property, they were able to get credit for it. And we've seen some other municipalities, I think in Delaware County, also use, shared parking lots or community parking lots in order to put in some of these charging stations. So if you have a spot in mind, certainly we want these to be put in where they're going to be used. So don't let it not being on municipal property, stop you. It's just we're gonna have to be a little bit more creative on it.
I also included the link in the Q&A for NYSERDA's interactive map for disadvantaged communities, and I can add that in the chat as well.
Fantastic. So we were scheduled to go until 6:30, so we'll see if there's any more questions, but if not, there's going to be a recording of this, as we mentioned. We'll send it to you as a follow-up email in the next couple of days. We ask that you share that with other folks that you think are going to be interested in this. So, other people in your municipality, or if you have friends, family in other municipalities, send it to them, encourage them to participate in this program. We brought $1.78 million to the Southern Tier in the first iteration of the program, and we'd love to get a whole bunch more funding to communities here in this next version of the program. So certainly everyone's welcome to engage us in this program and see if we can bring some funding in. All right. Well, we'll give it another minute. If there's no more other questions, then thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it.